Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and as we seem to have in another one of those weeks where Labour are annoying a few anti-Tories, I thought I'd try and explain in nice, easy to understand terms why this is necessary, with hopefully a useful graphic to illustrate the points. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So I've done this a few times for individual cases, explaining why, well, certain parties, but mostly Labour, are adopting them or seeming to adopt certain positions, why they use certain phrases. But I think what might help is a general overview of election strategy. Not going to discuss any individual statement or policy, but how all of them can make sense if you consider the importance of, where different voters are on the political compass. So let's begin by grouping voters into four quadrants on that compass. So there's left and right, of course. This is the economic axis. Those on the left place an emphasis on the state controlling the means of supply and production, particularly of very important services, with the extreme left being communism, of course, where there is no free enterprise at all. The state controls the means of all production and supply. The right wing has an emphasis on the private sector producing and supplying, with the extreme right wing being free market capitalism, where the only thing the state provides is a military to stop people invading us and a police force to keep the population in line. There is then the social axis, with liberal leanings below, authoritarian ones above. Now, these quadrants are not evenly distributed with voters, but publicly available data on how each one is populated is not always easy to come by. Polls would indicate that the bottom left quadrant is the most densely populated, but not overwhelmingly so. Also, when it comes to election strategy, what the majority of people think is irrelevant. Not every person votes, so they don't express their view at all. Of those who do vote, not every voter lives in a constituency that has a reasonable chance of changing hands. Where a voter does live in a constituency that has a reasonable chance of changing hands, they don't necessarily use their vote to influence the outcome. They may vote for someone who has zero chance of winning, for example. So we're going to look at this empirically to an extent. So if you were deciding Labour's strategy for the election, if you think about it from the point of view of we need to work out a strategy to allow Labour to win the election, and you wanted to compile policies to win that election, what are you faced with? Well, the first thing to note is that Labour sits most happily in the bottom left and the Conservatives in the top right. But although the government will be formed by either Labour or the Conservatives, we do not have a two-party system. In terms of the British parties who will win some representation in Westminster, the distribution of parties on this compass looks like this. Note a couple of things. I'm only putting on parties who win seats in Westminster. There are other parties who have a material impact on which of these mainstream parties will win those seats, but I don't need to unnecessarily complicate things here. And also bear in mind, this is not quantitatively placed. Don't bend my ear about, this party should be further this way or that. Each party moves around their various quadrants from election to election anyway, because they will change their manifesto according to various circumstances. I'm just placing them in the quadrants where they sit most happily with their core values and majority of supporters. This is a qualitative graphical illustration. So the first problem for Labour is that the Conservatives have completely free rein on the authoritarian side of the compass amongst those parties, and almost complete free rein on the right wing. The Liberal Democrats straddle left and right, so some centre-right voters will of course vote Liberal Democrat. Also, when competence is an issue, as it is now, you will get people on the centre-right voting for other parties as well, including Labour, as being preferable to an incompetent right-wing government, better competent centre-left, even for centre-right voters. This is why business groups are much more positive about Labour these days. It's because they see the Conservatives as having no plan for businesses at all. But in general terms, when all of the parties are applying intelligent strategy, the Conservatives have little competition for right-wing votes and no competition at all for authoritarian votes. Or at least that was the case before the Brexit Party and now Reform UK. But, forget about those for now. Labour, on the other hand, have literally every non-Tory party vying for the votes in their happy place. So now let's consider voters in the top left, because these are crucial. They are left-leaning. They want well-funded, free at point of access health and social care. They want good quality state-provided education for their kids. Where essential services are privatised, they at least want them to be regulated so that they are good quality without being unaffordable. They tend to be people on low to modest incomes, so household budgets can be tight. So this element of their politics attracts them to Labour. However, they also think that immigration's too high, and they think that criminal justice should have a strong emphasis on punishment. Whereas those of us in the bottom half think the emphasis should be on increasing equality of opportunity to reduce the level of criminal behaviour, and then when someone is convicted of a crime, put the focus on rehabilitation to avoid reoffending. I mean, I'll tell you where traditional authoritarian attitudes fall down for me. So, someone above the x-axis wants people who commit crimes to face a tough sentence in prison, right? But then their skills are missing from the economy. So, if you want lengthy prison sentences instead of effective ones, where people are released earlier but with lower chance of reoffending because you focus on rehabilitation, then how do you compensate for the loss to the economy because their skills are now missing from the economy? Well, you need more workers then to compensate, don't you? Because you've got a load of people in prison. And the longer you want them to stay in prison, the more prisons you need to build, the more people are removed from the workforce and placed into prison. And you need to get those missing skills from somewhere. Well, that means more immigration. Oh, but wait, they don't like that either. But anyway, little aside. So you need to come up with a strategy for Labour to win the election. We've already discussed the first problem, which is that their happy place is a very crowded quadrant. Yes, decent number of voters there, but so many parties splitting the vote. The Conservatives are on their own in the top right. But there's another 3 problems, and all of them centre around that group on the top left. The first is that those people are attracted to Labour for economic policies, but the Conservatives for social justice policies. So if you've got someone in that quadrant and they want to vote for either Labour or the Conservatives because they want to use their vote to determine who funds the next government, they have to decide what's more important, their economic views or their social justice views. Now, given that Labour are already behind with their main quadrant filled with rivals, they cannot really afford to fall behind in this one either, and there are millions of voters in that top left. Second problem is that the Conservatives don't just sit and hope for an even distribution of votes from their adjacent quadrants. They actively appeal to the others. Dishonestly, but actively. You know the sort of thing. For the top left, they'll promise 40 new hospitals, 350 million quid a week to the NHS, more doctors, weekend GP surgeries, more teachers. They haven't delivered any of it. They didn't intend to deliver any of it, but they promise it, and they keep promising it. So now those on the top left think that the Conservatives tick both of their boxes. Well, they're promising, better housing, more teachers, more doctors, more hospitals, more money for the NHS. And they are against immigration and in favour of tougher sentences for criminals. Tick all the boxes. It's really impossible to consider these facts and believe that Labour can possibly win with a strategy that focuses their offer exclusively in that bottom left quadrant. Yes, the vast majority of their policies will be there. Also, bear in mind, for many of the voters in that bottom left, it's not enough simply to be in the bottom left for Labour. Because there are some people who'll go, I need Labour to be in this specific part of this quadrant, because that's where I am, and I will vote for a party that's there. To which Labour go, OK, all right, so we do that, we get your vote, but then we lose all these people over here, because they're saying, well, no, you should be in this part of the quadrant. So Labour can't possibly garner even the vast majority of those votes anyway. So, but their core values are in that bottom left. So, of course, the vast majority of their policies will be there. But impossible to win an election with those alone. The vote is split too many ways. There are too many people who will make great the enemy of the good. And the Conservatives are making offers outside of their own core values, even though they have no intention of delivering on them. So Labour have to make some offers to those in the top left. It doesn't sit right with many of us, but the only alternative is accepting Conservative rule forevermore. that is even less acceptable to me. The Conservatives have killed tens of thousands of people unnecessarily as a direct result of their policies and plunged many more into poverty under every single one of their leaders so far. It is a moral imperative that they be stopped. But there's a third problem with this group as well. See, right now, you can get a decent number of these people from the top left being attracted to Labour, more attracted to Labour than the Conservatives, not only a result of Tory incompetence on both of their political angles, but with severe public service crises, their need for Labour to fix those is more likely to override their desire to punish people they don't even know. So their economic views may take precedence over their social justice views. And even under these circumstances, Labour cannot take their votes for granted, because this tends to be quite a disaffected group. But I'll come on to that. So they have to make some offer. But consider what happens later. So Labour form a government on the back of some of these votes. They start to fix public services. People's incomes tends to go ahead of the rate of inflation, just as it does under all Labour governments. After a while, these people start to relax a bit because the problems are being dealt with. They take for granted the much better public services and their standard of living. And they start to put more emphasis on immigration and criminal justice again, which Labour aren't speaking to them about. They start to see the Conservatives as more attractive. At that point, a Labour Party still focused on a strategy of continuing to win will need to make better offers. And if they don't, the Conservatives will win power again, because they will. This is the need for pragmatism in politics, especially in a first-past-the-post system, as we currently have. No other way to win. Yes, it's another argument for proportional representation, but we don't have that. No matter what Labour's private intentions in that direction are, if they have any at all, the next election, at least, and probably the one after, is going to be fought on the first-past-the-post basis. And you tell me there's a way for Labour to win such an election without making offers to people grouped around the centre in the adjoining quadrants. And the voters in the top left are so important because, as I say, they are the disaffected ones. There is no mainstream party which sits in their quadrant. Bottom right, you've got Liberal Democrats. Top right, you've got the Conservatives. Bottom left, you've got basically every other bugger. Top left, completely unrepresented by the core values of any party. Now, the Brexit Party, which is now the Reform UK Party, claim to represent them. They talk about economically left-wing policies as well as authoritarian policies aiming to tick both boxes. But the people running the party are actually very right-wing. Nigel Farage, who they keep rolling out as their standard bearer, of course, is on record as saying we should be privatising this, that and the other, including healthcare. The party may promise strong public services, but they privately talk about the need to privatise everything. So they lie, just like the Tories. They're lying about their economic policies. But their success owes a great deal to recognising that in that top left, you have a completely untapped voter base. They don't feel represented by any Westminster party. So plugging the idea of the establishment being against them, really easy for two reasons. First of all, the establishment is against them because most of these people are on low to middle incomes. And of course, they're being taken advantage of. But the second thing is there's no party in Westminster speaks to them. No party in Westminster which is left-wing authoritarian. Because that is North Korea. And who wants to be North Korea? Not even North Korea. So their votes are up for grabs. They're crucial to winning power. But those votes need to be won amongst a voter base that is suspicious of Westminster parties. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.